Okay. So robustness means insensitive to parameter variations or disturbance, noises, etc. Right? Suppose we have a model of a system, a transfer function we have. Say g of s equals s plus 2 divided by s plus 3 into s plus 4. Okay. Through some modeling mechanism, we got a transfer function, right? So here we assume that there is a system 0 at s is equal to minus 2. What do you mean by system 0 and system pole? Zeros are those values of s which make a transfer function 0.
0.
Okay, so s equal to minus 2. What happens? Transfer function becomes 0. G of minus 2 will be equal to 0. Okay. Similarly, poles are those values of s which make a transfer function infinite. Say, for example, s equal to minus 3 or s equal to minus 4. All these values, minus 3 and minus 4, will make the g of s infinite. Okay, so they are called system pole, right? So when you derive this transfer function model, we assumed that these are system 0 is at minus 2. We have one system pole at minus 3 and another one at minus 4. Okay, but practically it may not be. Say, for example, consider an RLC circuit. Okay, so how will you tell what is KVL here? How will you find the dynamic equation? You have to apply Kirchhoff's voltage law, right? Sum of potential rise must be equal to sum of potential drops. So V of t equals R into I of t plus 1 by C integral I dt plus L into di by dt. Okay, so here R is a constant. Say, let us take R to be 5 ohm. But do you think that 5 ohms will be a constant for after, say, t equal to, say, some 5 hours or 10 hours? Will it be constant? No, it will not be. Why? Because what is Ohm's law? At constant temperature, voltage is proportional to current I. Okay, or at constant temperature, V equals I into R. Right. So the moment you close the switch, what happens? Current starts flowing. And since current flows through resistance, there will be I square R and I square RT power will be there. Temperature will change. Okay, so it may not be 5 ohm anymore after, say, 5 hours or 10 hours. It may be 5.1 or it may be 4.9. Okay, so that 0.1 difference, that is what we mean by parameter variation. Okay, so you may design a controller for s plus 2 by s plus 3 and s plus 4. And when you implement that controller, you will see that the system output, the controlled system output will be something else. Okay, it will not be exact, it will not be the desired output, right? What's the purpose of a controller? To make the actual output same as the desired output. Okay, so even though you are designing a controller for this system s plus 2 by s plus 3 and s plus 4, it may not give you the exactly the desired output. Why? Because of this parameter variation. Okay, so robust control systems means you have to design a controller so that system will work satisfactorily even in the presence of such disturbances or unwanted noise signals. Okay, so in robust control there are mainly two areas. Can be divided into two parts. One is called robust controller design. Robust controller design. Okay, and the other one is called robustness analysis. Robustness analysis. Okay, what is robust controller design? Robust controller design means you have to design controllers or you have to produce controllers that can tolerate uncertainties. That can tolerate the uncertainties. Okay, say for example, here the temperature may vary maximum between 5.1 and 4.9. Okay, 4.9 to 5.1. Okay, so what's the mean value here? Mean value is 5.0. Okay, so you know that the limits of variation. It may be minus 0.1 and it can go up to plus 0.1. Okay, so if you know these things, then you can design or produce a controller which can tolerate this much uncertainty. Okay, that is one area that is called robust control design. Then in robustness analysis, it means we have to evaluate. So we have to evaluate how much uncertainties how much uncertainties can be tolerated for any given controller. Okay, so what's the difference between the two? One is you know the perturbation or the uncertainty values limits. Knowing the uncertainty limits, you have to design a controller. That is what is robust controller design. What's the second one is robustness analysis. You have designed a controller. So with the designed controller, how much uncertainties can be tolerated? Okay, given a controller, how much uncertainties can be tolerated by the control system? That is what is called robustness analysis. Okay, so these are the two areas how robust control has been divided into. Okay. Now, what are the sources of uncertainties? Sources of model uncertainties. Sources of model uncertainties. Okay. There are many reasons or many sources. First one is parameters in the linear model. Parameters in the linear model. Okay, say for example here, as I said before, we assumed it to be 5, but actually it could have been 5.1 or 4.9. So we are ignoring that. Okay, so that itself is one source of uncertainty. Okay, and secondly, so in some applications we have to identify the model from input-output data. Okay, you will have a string of input data and a string of output data. Okay, so from this string of input-output data, we may have to create a model, right? And unfortunately, this input-output data may be noisy one. Okay, because if you remember, in the conventional control system, there's a controller here, there's a plant, right? And then there's a sensor which is supposed to give a true feedback of the output signal. But there may be some vibrations. Say a sensor may be on a longitudinal, it can shake or it can vibrate. Okay, so those vibrations may also be sensed. So here you will get a corrupted signal, not a faithful output signal. Okay, so the data may be noisy one. So when you create a model from such noisy input-output data, there may be some uncertainties. Okay, that is one possibility. So it can be identified from noisy input-output data. From noisy input-output data. Okay, or when you are calculating, see, when I said this is a 5 ohm resistance, there may be some parasitic capacitors and inductance as well. Okay, because there is no pure resistance, 100% pure resistance. There is nothing like that. There will be always some leakage in inductance or some stray capacitance affected. Okay, so that may be there, but which we may not be knowing that. Okay, so uncertainty can also arise because of calculation from physical modeling. Calculated from physical modeling. So identifying from noisy input-output data, that is another area of control system that is called system identification. Okay, just for your information, system identification. Okay. Then, so here we actually assume that everything is linear, but there are no systems which are 100% linear systems. Okay, so there may be non-linearities. Okay, in actuators or sensors. Okay, say for example, your actuator can get saturated. Okay, or there may be a sensor failure, right? Similarly, if you keep it, if you use that sensor for a long time because of aging or because hardware can get deteriorated. Okay, so all these reasons will contribute to another source of model uncertainty. Okay, so actuator or sensor. saturation, or it may fail, okay, or hardware deterioration over time. All these things will contribute to hardware deterioration and aging over time. Okay, so all these things will lead to uncertainty being generated. Okay, then sometimes we will deliberately ignore the higher order terms. Okay, so if you remember, how do we analyze a nonlinear system? The common approach is to linearize that about an operating point. Okay, how? With the help of Taylor series.
Taylor series.
So in Taylor series, what will you do? You will expand it as a series, right? F of x plus x naught or plus delta x will be what? F of x plus df of x by dx into delta x plus d square f by dx square into delta x square by 2 factorial plus etc. Okay, so all higher order terms we ignore. Okay, so those things can get accumulated and that may result in a significant uncertainty. Okay, another source of uncertainty, deliberate simplification of the model. Deliberate simplification of the model. Okay, then there may be uncertainty in the controller, right? Because see, your controller, you will see that in the due course of time, when we design a robust controller, it may be of order higher than the plant. Say, for example, your plant may be at a 20th order plant or a 30th order plant, right? When you design a robust controller, it may be of the order 35 or it may be of the order 40. Okay, so in such cases, what we do is that we will go for model order reduction. Okay, model order reduction. So we can say that deliberate reduction of controller order. Reduction of controller order. Okay. Or say, for example, your microcontroller may have some restriction. Okay, so you may have to use some, say, first few decimal points. Say, for example, you got a PID controller gain as KP. You got say 5.37846279. Okay, but because of controller implementation limits, you may be able to use only the first 4 points, first 4 decimal points. Okay, you may have to ignore the remaining part. So these things will eventually get accumulated. That may be another reason for error. Okay, so these are all sources of uncertainties, model uncertainties. Okay, so in general, these uncertainties can be categorized into two. One is called the parametric uncertainty. Parametric uncertainty, or real uncertainties. Okay, what is parametric uncertainty or real uncertainty? They indicate the possible parameter variations. Possible parameter variations. So that means the structure of the model is known, but some of the parameters are uncertain. That's the mean. Okay, we know what's the structure of the system, but some parameters may be not known to us. Okay, that is the structure of the model. Structure of the model, including the order, is known. But some of the parameters are uncertain. But some of the parameters are uncertain. That's why it's called parametric uncertainty. Uncertainty in the parameters. Okay. Typically, such changes occur due to variations in masses or inertias in dynamic systems and so on. Okay. So this is quantified this kind of uncertainties, they are quantified by assuming that each parameter is bounded within some region. Okay, so we will say, so what we do, say for example, there's a resistance value which is not known. So we may know its nominal value, say 5 ohm. Okay, so we will assume that first initially, say it can go up to maximum, say 5.5. Okay, or to a minimum value of 4.5. Right. So these limits are known, 4.5 to 5.5. That limit value we know. Okay, so such that is what we mean by parametric uncertainty. Okay, so the structure is known, but some of the parameters are uncertain. Okay, so the resistance value is not known to us. So that is quantified by assuming that each parameter is bounded within some region. Okay, that is what we mean by parametric uncertainty or real uncertainty. The second one is called non-parametric uncertainty or dynamic uncertainty. Non-parametric uncertainty or dynamic uncertainty. Okay. So what do you mean by non-parametric uncertainty? It will give a more general description of the planned uncertainty. Okay. So these uncertainties typically occur in higher order dynamics. Okay, and they are neglected. And they occur because we'll be neglecting higher order dynamics. Okay, so such uncertainties are called non-parametric uncertainties. Okay, that occurs because of we'll be neglecting the higher order parameters or higher order terms in the Taylor series. Okay, this is also parametric uncertainty is also called structured uncertainty. That is more technical term, structured uncertainty. Okay, because structure is known, but the parameter uncertain value is not known. Okay, structure is known, so that is why it's called structured uncertainty. And non-parametric uncertainty is also called unstructured uncertainty. Unstructured uncertainty. Okay, these are the two ways how uncertainties are classified. Okay, so now we will go to the next topic, that is called norms. So we have a system here. Okay, so there may be multiple inputs and multiple outputs, right? So your input signal may be a signal vector u bar t. Okay, and output may be another vector of signals y bar of t. Okay, so norm actually is a measure. Okay, it's a measure which will give the size of a signal basically. Okay, it's a measure that is used to describe the size of a signal. Gives overall size. Signal or a vector, anything. Okay, signal of a vector or a matrix or a signal or a system. Okay, or a system. Because you see, in a typical control system, there are many kind of signals. Signals are there, right? One is the input, commands input. One is the error signal. Okay, one is the output from the plant, right? So there should be some mechanism to quantify these things. It's the feedback signal. Okay, so these are all. So there is no point in saying error is large or error is small. Small means how small or how large. Okay, it has to be quantified. Okay, so norm is a measure used to give the size of a vector, a matrix, a signal, or a system. Okay. So how is norm defined? A norm of E. E is a vector. Okay, but this bar under bar stands for a vector. Okay, which it may be a vector, maybe a matrix, signal system. Is a norm of signal E is a real valued number, a real valued number. Okay, and how is that denoted? That is denoted by this. Okay, two vertical bars on the left and right. Okay, real valued number with the following properties. With the following properties. One, norm of that signal must be greater than or equal to 0. It's a non-negative number. Okay, norm of signal is always a non-negative number. Can be 0, can be greater than 0. It can never be less than 0. Okay. 2, norm of E must be equal to 0. Means what? The signal itself is equal to 0. That's the mean. Okay. Norm of a quantity E equal to 0 means that quantity itself has to be 0. 3, norm of alpha times E, where alpha is a scalar. Okay, some real or complex number. Norm of this thing must be equal to mod alpha into norm of E. Okay, for every real or complex number alpha. Okay, so all these properties have to be satisfied. And finally, the last one, norm of sum of two signals, E1 plus E2, must be less than or equal to norm of E1 plus norm of E2. Okay, for any real or complex E1 and E2. Okay, so these are the properties to be satisfied. Okay, now let us consider vector norms. Suppose your E is a vector norms. Suppose we have a vector here. Okay, vector with m elements. Do you know what's the meaning of this notation? What's the meaning of this notation?
Orders.
You have a vector A. What's the meaning of this notation? This is the vector space. Okay, C raised to m. C raised to m means there are m elements. Okay, maybe in a row way or in a column way. Okay, this is a vector A. What's the meaning of this? Vector space. Okay, if you go through books, you will see this kind of notation. Okay, you must understand what it is. So this is a vector A with m elements. That means this vector A belongs to this vector space. Okay. Okay. So first one is the P norm. P norm is, is defined like this: sigma I whole raised to 1 by P. What is AI? See, what is our vector A? There is A1, A2, etc. up to AM. Okay, AI means the ith element. That's the meaning. Okay, so P norm of this vector is defined like this. You take the absolute value of each element, A1, A2, etc. up to AM, right? Sum it up. Sum it up. Okay, and then you take the pth root. That is how it is. P norm is defined. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then one norm. This one norm is also called sum norm or L1 norm. So what will be the one norm? It is the pth norm. So instead of P, you put 1. So what will be the one norm? One norm will be nothing but sigma I mod AI. Okay, let us take one example, then it will be clear. Suppose you have a vector B with elements 1, 3, and -5. Can you find the one norm? Find. What is the one norm? Find. What's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of this definition? You take the absolute value of each element, sum it up. Okay. What is that?
9.
9. Okay. That is what is one norm. So you can say that it is sum of absolute value of the vector elements. Vector elements. Okay, that is why it is called sum norm. Okay, it is a sum of absolute value of the vector elements. Right. Next one, 2 norm. That's also called the Euclidean norm or L2 norm. Okay, so you see what is our P norm here? This last thing. So how will you find that 2 norm? 2 norm will be is defined like this: square root of sigma I A square. Okay, what's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of this? What is AI? AI is the ith element. Okay, so you take the absolute value of each element. What you have to do then? What you have to do? Square it up. Then what you have to take? What you have to do?
Summation.
Summation, and then you have to take the square root. Okay. Find what is the 2 norm here? Find what's the 2 norm for this vector? Root of 1 plus 9 plus 25. How much?
35.
Root 35. Okay, that is what is 2 norm. Okay, so all these things will give some measure. Okay, some measure of the same. One norm must different from 2 norm for the same vector. Okay, so all these things, when to use 1 norm, when to use 2 norm, that depends on your application. Okay, there is no specific rule. L1 norm should be used in so and so situations. There's nothing like that. Okay, depending upon your application, depending upon your requirement, you are depending upon the accuracy that you need. Okay, you can go for 1 norm, 2 norm, or any other norm. Class. Okay, next, infinity norm. Infinite norm. Infinite norm is also called max norm, maximum norm, or L infinity norm. Okay, how is that defined? That is defined like this. That is defined as maximum of I among all elements. What is the meaning of this? Any idea? Can someone tell me?
Maximum value of the elements.
Yeah, largest element magnitude. Yes, correct. Okay, so this means the largest element magnitude. Okay, you take the maximum value of all absolute value of all the elements, maximum among that. Okay, so what will be infinite norm here?
5.
5. Infinite norm. Infinite norm is 5. Okay, largest element magnitude. So in MATLAB, if you are doing in MATLAB, there are some commands. Okay, this norm a comma 1, that will give you norm 1 norm, right? Then norm of a comma 2 will give you the 2 norm, and similarly norm of a INF will give you the infinity norm. Okay, these are some MATLAB commands. Okay, so what we discussed so far was for vectors. Now we will go into matrix norm. Why? Because our system, there are MIMO systems, multiple input, multiple output systems may be there. Okay, and there may be many subsystems within that. Okay, when you discuss transfer function, it is always a SISO system. There is only one input and one output, right? But MIMO systems means there may be many transfer functions. Suppose you have 2 inputs or 2 outputs, Y1, Y2, and 2 inputs, U1 and U2. Okay, how many transfer functions will be there?
2.
No.
4.
4, because you can have transfer function between Y1 and U1, between Y2 and U1. Similarly, between Y1 and U2 and between Y2 and U2. There can be 4 transfer functions. Okay, so you will not get a simple transfer function in that case. You will get a transfer function matrix. Okay, G11, G12, G21, G22. It's a MIMO system. Okay, so whenever there are multiple input, multiple output, you will always get transfer function matrix. Okay, so now we have to extend the concept of norm to a system. So before that, we will do it that to a matrix. Matrix norm. So here also, it has all the properties as we saw in the case of vector. Plus that one extra condition will be there. Okay. Anyway, I will write that again. So you have a matrix A here, right? So the norm of that must be greater than or equal to 0, as we saw in the vector case. Okay. No, this has to be greater than or equal to 0. Then this equal to 0 means what? Equal to 0 means A is equal to 0. Okay, that's the matrix A is 0. Then similarly, the scalar property means K into norm of A. Okay, as we saw here. This. Okay, and similarly, the next one, 4. Metric the norm of A plus B should be less than or equal to norm of A plus norm of B. And we have an additional condition here, that is, but the multiplicity, this thing, AB, that should be, yes, Srinivasan?
If A contains any complex values,
Ah.
can they, during taking norm, can they cancel and become 0? So then A will not be equal to 0, right?
Come again.
If A contains any complex numbers, sir.
Yes.
Then A need not be equal to 0, no, the second property.
Why it cannot be always 0?
If there are any complex numbers,
Ah.
then when we take the norm, the square becomes minus and the norm becomes 0. So A need not be equal to 0, I'm asking, sir.
It need not be 0 in that case, right? So then I think this must be with the real coefficients basically.
Yes, sir. That assumption should come before.
Yes.
For A.
Yes, that should be there. Yes, correct. What you said is right. That possibility exists if your matrix has complex numbers. What you said is right, Srinivasan. Okay, so we are considering only real numbers here. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So this should be less than or equal to norm of A in the norm of B. Right? So as we did one norm, two norm, etc. Again, we have to define some norms for the matrix. So first one is some matrix norm. Some matrix norm is defined like this. Sigma I comma j mod aij. Okay. What's the meaning of this? It is sum of the element magnitudes. Say for example, suppose you have a, who is that?
Sir, this is Chaitanya.
Oh, who is this?
Chaitanya.
Vipin. Yes, Vipin.
Sir, Chaitanya.
Yes, Chaitanya.
Actually, in mathematics, when we basically say norm, it is the magnitude. So, when we take a complex number, 3 plus 4i something, norm means we'll just take the magnitude, no, sir, like 3 square plus 4 square. In that case,
tomorrow I'll clarify that. Okay, I need to look into that. Okay, tomorrow I'll clarify. Can you raise the point tomorrow?
Yes, sir, yes.
Yeah, tomorrow I'll clarify that. So suppose we have a matrix like this. A equals 1, 2, minus 3, 4. Okay. Find what is the sum norm. What's the sum norm here? What will be the sum norm? You have to take the absolute value of each element, add it up.
10.
10. Okay, some norm will be 10. Okay. What's the time? It's 10:40, right? So we'll stop here and meet again tomorrow. Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, little bit down, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yes, sir, little down.
Down, okay.
Some more, sir. From the properties. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Srini, I want another help from your end. Can you create a group mail ID in Google for us? I have to send some documents actually.
Okay, sir. We already have one for. Okay, sir. I'll try.
Okay,
to
please
connect
add all, and send me that email ID. So I will send you some MATLAB PDF files. Okay. So this course, there is no, as I said before, we have to try with some practical examples, some simulation examples. So I will send you some MATLAB documents. Okay. So which you can go through in your free time. Okay. Parallelly, you have to go through all those things. Then only you can have a full understanding of the subject. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So Srini, you just let me know what's the email ID, common email ID.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. I'll let you know.
Yeah, thank you. So see you tomorrow.